So a little secret is that I do all my recording on a phone, and it means that I have to look at my own boat race whenever I do an intro or a piece to camera. And it's very, very clear to me that I'm now certainly over 50 years old and starting to look my age. Not that I was ever looking like a model. I mean, I'm not the sort of person to make a duffel coat look fashionable, put it like that.
I know how this bit goes.
But I'm getting on a bit now. But you know what? I don't care. Do you know why? Because I've got a Heli Shed! Welcome, legends and heli heads and choppers and twizzle whizzle thumbers and stick bangers and scale flyers and general geeks and people that speak through their adenoids. Welcome all to update 2 of the Bell 222 build, Bella. In update 1, I took you through building the fuselage and the bits and pieces that I've done, etc. In this update, I'm going to give you an update, obviously, on the frame and also the lighting that I've done inside the fuselage. So, without further ado, let me flip you around and take you over what I've done so far. If you remember in update 1, I said that my intent was to make sure that Bella's mechanics was able to be lifted out of the fuselage in a oneer with no cables that were reliant on being routed inside the fuselage. Now, personally, I think that's important. You've got to be able to maintain the mechanics, unless of course you just want to build it as a fuselage, fly it once or twice and then never fly it thereafter because you can't get to the mechanics to check that everything's all right. Well, that's madness. So if you're going to go to the extent of building a fuselage scale helicopter, let alone a super scale helicopter, but a scale helicopter, then the time that you take labelling your cables and being very diligent with routing along the frame is time well spent, and it will pay you back tenfold. Now, Bella, as we can see here, has got all of her mechanics fitted in. She's running with DS610 servos, which are a few generations old now, but ultimately perfectly good enough for scale flight, with I believe a 650 on the tail. The motor we're running is quite torquey. It's a 490 kV, a line dominator, which is fitted as standard to the 700X. And the reason why we're running with that, put simply, is because we're going to be having a low head speed and we're running with asymmetrical spin blades to provide more lift. So the helicopter is going to weigh about 9 kilograms, which is twice as heavy as a normal pod and boom 700 size helicopter. So I've gone with a low KV. You'll also note that the nose part of Bella has been, which is off screen, so let me just do it. There you go. This part would normally come out here, wouldn't it? Well, I've custom cut that. Let me put you back. I've custom cut that to be only mountable for the Microbeast X. That's the only thing that's being mounted there. Now, originally, I was going to mount the fly barless unit actually on the floor of the fuselage. But, well, the centre of gravity and the centre of rotation is the mast. And if this was a pod and boom, then the Microbeast X will be mounted around about this area, or at the most on the trays, on the left or right hand side of the nose piece. So I've decided to keep the fly barless unit as close to the centre of rotation as I possibly can. You know what, this is designed for it, so why not? It also adds to the strengthening of the frame. I think while I've been waffling on for a couple of minutes, you've probably been looking at the tabs, etc. That I've put on here, and I won't go through these, but suffice it to say, where they are joined, they are secured either side with very high bonding double-sided tape, and all I've done is kept one side on and then printed off what that particular cable is. There's no way this is going to come off. You've got more chance of, the Lord Jesus Christ turning up tomorrow in Audis. It's simply not going to happen. As much as we'd like the Lord Jesus Christ to come and buy a donut, I don't think he's going to be wandering Audis to do so.
He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy.
The wise-eyed amongst you would have noticed that I've routed an extension cable from the BEC, which provides me 5 volts, or
minimum 5 volts, whatever I set it for in the ESC, but it probably run about 7.4 volts to an extension cable up here, which gives me the freedom to be able to run powered system off of here if I want. And again, the eagle eyes will notice that I've got a 7.4 volt battery 2 cell on the back tray here, and that is because that powers our Uni-light system, and we'll cover that later. In fact, no, we won't. If you want to know more about that, go and have a look at it up there. Now, looking head on to Bella, and you'll have to forgive this, but obviously these are our cables that will be mounted in the fuselage rather than on the actual body of the aircraft. The only cables that we've mounted, or the only part of this machine that we've mounted in the fuselage, is our receiver. We won't be using this 8-channel receiver. We're using a 9-channel receiver with 2 satellites, and I'll cover that in another video. But now this is just so that I can test the servos and the fly barless unit, etc. So we just move that to one side, because what we want to focus on here are 3 main things. The first is the position of the ESC. The second is the program in port, which I've hardwired in. And the third point is a position of a fan. Now look, here's the thing. Unless your name is Tariq Al-Sadi and you're a super stick banger, an ESC does not need... Oh, that's Mrs Heli Shed. Let's see what Mrs Heli Shed has to say. I'm on a radio. Mrs Heli Shed, send over. Wonderful. Well, are you going to bring it down then? Just for those of you who thought I was joking, I've got no hope of her bringing me a cup of tea down the coffee down the Heli Shed. But there we go. So I've got coffee in a minute. But back to the ESC. You don't really need to mount a fan on the ESC. And a lot of people remove the fan. It interferes when set up and so on. And as I said, unless you're really pushing your helicopter and you're a super stick banger, in which case you're probably 21 with a fighter pilot reactions rather than 50 plus years old and a bit slow. You don't really need a fan on the ESC. I've never run one, I've always taken them off. But in a fuselage, things can get warm in there. So I've decided to mount a fan just at the back here. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. And that is a slightly skew width. Good grief, I'll have to change that. But that is running off of the 5 volt supply, or the BEC supply. That can handle up to 7.4 volts, so more than good enough. And that chucks some air on that, so that keeps that nice and cool. The third thing I wanted to point out, so that's the first, the ESC, the fan, and the next is this. Look at this. ESCs aren't mounted here. This would be normally where we have our batteries go through onto the battery tray, but the battery tray being up here. But I've created my own shelf here with a bit of wood and mounted the ESC on that. The wood is epoxied in and screwed in from the sides via tiny little screws, not that they're needed. And the ESC is mounted on top of that. And as you can see at the side here, should be able to see it at the side, then a couple of cables coming down. That's keeping that nice and secure. That's going nowhere. Trust me on that. In fact, even the fan, skew wiffly mounted, that isn't going anywhere. So you know what? Sod it. I think I'll keep it exactly as it is. On the other side, much of the same, but you can tell straight away which cable is for channel 1, channel 2 and channel 4. Channel 1, remember, on the line Trex is your elevator. Channel 2 is your aileron. Channel 3, which as we know is on the other side, is for the pitch. And channel 4 is for our rudder. And again, this just ensures that when I do come to maintain it, there's no ambiguity, because there's going to be a lot of cables as to what does what. And of course, it means that I can, as I said in update 1, remove the mechanics completely. Right, let's have a quick update on the fuselage. There she is. Bless her heart. Right, let's have a quick look. Set the doghouse off. Quick one before we do. I had to create my own cutout here for the elevator guide. We don't really want to not fly the mechanics without the elevator guide. Otherwise, there's a possibility of the swash moving left to right on the mast. So this ensures that I can run the elevator guide. You'll also note I move the beacon from the doghouse to back onto the fuselage, and that's so that I can remove the doghouse without any cables and it being connected to the main fuselage. Inside you can see the Uni-light 4 system at the back there, with the 4 channels labelled up: strobe, navigation, beacon and landing light, and that's all in there nice and secure. Along the sides I've routed the cables and labelled the cables up. Here we can see that is the cable for the right retract, and over the other side you can see down here as these cables, lots of cables everywhere, that is for the Uni-light server power. And then as we come along here we can see these cables are flattened and mounted against very high bonding tape. The bottom cable there, which if we go along we can see is the landing light cable. That landing light power cable there is mounted on very high bonding tape, and also little bits of hot glue to make sure that that doesn't come off, purely simply because it's twisted wire and it's not got so much contact surface as flat wire. The flat wire again on very high bonding tape and with it appropriately labelled up at the front here. Top one left retract, the middle one is for the Uni-light server power, and again just like Bella's main frame, that ensures that we are going to know what cables are what. We know that the Uni-light system provides us our main lighting system. It's a professional system, it's absolutely outstanding. You can't get any better, and there is no better, to be frank. Now I haven't gone with that to be elitist, I've gone with that because it looks fantastic and it gives me the strobe light in the navigation light, and the only lighting system that you're going to get that will give you the scale teardrop shape of the light here, and the strobe inside, which is exactly the same for a Bell 222. So we've got the navigation light at the back mounted in the tail fin as we've covered previously. We've got 2 beacons, one up at the top and one at the bottom here, there with their caps on. We've got our navigation lights either side, and we've also got 4 other lights here. At the front here we've got 2 spotlights, and these are just landing spotlights. These are only 5mm LEDs, and they are being powered from this little box I've put in the footwell. Now this is a GT power lighting system that you can buy for radio controlled cars. It's not much cop, to be honest with you, for anything major for aircraft or helicopters, but for auxiliary lighting, in my view, you don't need to go out and buy something really expensive. This is perfectly fine enough, and it's being powered via the Uni-light system. I've run another cable from the Uni-light, paralleled it off to power this box, and this box gives us 4 other lights. As I said, the 2 at the front either side, and they're epoxied in, they're going nowhere, they're just proud of the nose, as you can see. And I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to get this in, I don't think so actually, but inside the footwells of the nose are 2 red LED lights, and when the lights are and when it's dark, basically this glows up red. It looks fantastic actually. And then there's a small sort of glow of red just on the outside here. It looks nice, it looks the part. Also, one other thing is that I've mounted a switch on the side here, and this is switchable power for the helicopter lighting system. There you go. I hope that was useful. I think you will agree we've made significant progress. Before I go, a shout out to Stotts. Stotts, who's just got a Bell 222, come across that in a few helicopters, just starting to build it, etc., or refine it and custom it to how he likes it. Good luck with it, enjoy the journey, and by all means ask any questions. Right, that's enough from me. It's time for coffee. Take care. Till the next video. Bye-bye.